Good morning, good afternoon, no, good high noon. How are you guys? See, I like to come up before noon so I can say good morning. That's my favorite greeting, but I missed it by a minute, 1 minute. So here we are. It's Thursday, it's October 24th. Our little puppy dog Coco is going to be in surgery soon. She's at the hospital. She's going under the knife to get her cancer removed. So I'll start with prayers for Coco, please. And I have some important stuff I wanted to get in with you guys today to speak about. Sorry I couldn't come on live yesterday. That was because we were dropping her off at the hospital at Ohio State University, one of the best animal hospitals in the world. I think that it's technically ranked fourth in the nation right now. And you know how I'm like all into statistics like that because, I'm just a weirdo. Anyway, let's get started with hitting that like button if you'd be so kind. It's something that we often forget to do. I know I forget to do it all the time when I'm watching videos. And when they remind me on the video, then I do it. Please let me know if you can hear me. I never know if I actually have sound or not. This morning, there were a lot of problems with my live stream, so that's why it didn't get started until noon. This was my fourth attempt, you guys. I don't know what's going on. I'm just looking at my phone. I got a text from my daughter learning how to sew today to make a cape. I'm sure a Halloween costume. That's cute. Anyway, if you're here and can say hi and let me know if you can hear me, that would be great. I'm going to just type into this. Can you hear me? Always makes me think of that song from The Who. Tommy, can you hear me? They were probably my very first favorite band. The Who and the Beatles were probably my first two favorite bands when I was a little kid. The Who was my first concert that I ever went to. I was 8, and my father took his kids to the Anaheim Stadium in Los Angeles to see The Who with Little Feat opening up. I think that the venue held like 100,000 people. Not the sharpest tool in the shed, not really a place to take an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. And he took at least one of our friends that I remember too. But I always figured he just wanted to go to the concert and he didn't care. You can hear me. Thank you, Annie Ruler from San Felipe. Nice to see you today, my dear. How are you? So the things that I feel very pressed to speak to today in my live, and I tried to get on live yesterday to speak to these things, but just couldn't manage it with all that was going on with the puppy dog. So we're just hoping for the best. Maybe I'll post a picture of the before and after with the puppy dog with her surgery, but we'll see. We'll see how gross it is because I don't want to gross you guys out like I did with my toe last year. My toe is so close to 100%. I can't believe it. So close to 100%. It doesn't hurt at all. The only thing that makes it not 100% is that the toenail is just like a millimeter shorter than the other toenail. But it's all good. It's all good. Anyway, I know you guys were just dying to get an update on my toe, right? So the thing that I really wanted to talk about today that's way more important than my toe, I don't know, our toes are pretty important. Anyway, Vanessa Gillian, am I saying her name right? The young woman that was murdered in an artillery warehouse by a senior officer who'd been harassing her, I think violated her, and I believe it's another story of dismemberment. And sorry that I didn't give you guys the trigger warning. Annie Ruler says, who in 1976 acid for sale and stretchers, OD hippies? I was 16 and overwhelmed. Pitt sold out of grocery bags like popcorn. The Who in 1976. That was probably the concert that I'm talking about, right? Wow. Insane. I just got to Google it real quick. The Anaheim, because I hadn't thought about what year it was. I think you're right, though. Were you there? Is that what you're telling me, Annie? Did we run into each other? Did you see a little, like, 8-year-old girl there? Okay, let's see. The Who with Little Feet. Anaheim Stadium. 1976. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, March 21st, 1976. Are you serious? Were you there? That's so funny. I mean, it's really not funny that my father took a bunch of young girls there. Like, what was he thinking? I don't even want to ask that question because he could have well been thinking along the lines of the worst possible things, like Madeline Soto's mother kind of stuff. I mean, I would never put that past him. Yeah, that's wild. March 21st, 1976, my very first concert of my lifetime. And yeah, Roger Daltrey was one of my first crushes. Who was my other first crush? Captain Kirk, of course, not the one on YouTube, but the one from Star Trek. And then, of course, Larry Hagman from I Dream of Jeannie. Yuck. And he went to Oakland Arena. Pot marijuana sold out of grocery bags by handfuls. I was so out of my league, shocked. Yeah, fortunately, I didn't run into any of that as a third grader. That would have been the end of my third grade year, I believe, if I'm doing my math right. Wow. Or was it the end of my fourth grade year? Let's see. No, it was the end of my third. Yeah, 9 years old. No, that would make it the end of my fourth. Anyway, it don't matter. I was little. I was really little. So the thing with Vanessa Gillian, and let's just go over the, please make sure you're still subscribed, that you haven't inadvertently become unsubscribed or just gotten sick of me and unsubscribed yourself, but you're watching me anyway. I know I do that to some channels. I have to admit it. And then I'm like, why don't I just resub? Share a video of mine if you like. It's so funny how you can't. There we go. How it's all backwards, which is extra tricky when you're dyslexic. And turn on your notification bell to ring. There's the Liberty Bell. So it's like notification bell. And I know I didn't do that on purpose, but I love that it's like that. So I'll probably leave it like that. If you notice, everything is in like constant motion in my set. Where's that little squirrel right down there? And then you see one of the most recent additions, this tiny guitar. I won't go pointing out all the other goofy stuff that I have, but I try not to move stuff, but then stuff just gets moved. Anyway, I really like my full chakra tower from bottom to top. The whole thing is showing, except, above the two blues, because you have your light blue and then your cobalt blue, then you have the purple. And so I still don't even have a purple up there, but it wouldn't fit in if I did. I have a clear crystal ball up there to, figure out the future with. And I've heard that you can use clear, you can use gold, you can use purple. I'm actually looking for one that might be made of amethyst. Like, these are all just blown glass with air bubbles in them. And most of them are the colored glass. The only one that's not colored is that one. It's clear. And so I have a blue light behind it. But all the others are the color that you see with just a bright light behind it. Is it so cool? Anyway, I know I'm a weirdo. Me and my decor, it is one of my obsessions, but true crime is another one of my obsessions, and trying to get myself on track is another one. So here we go. Vanessa Guillen was the woman that was murdered on base that has come up in the news again. And I'm glad that she's come back into the news, because I don't feel like her case ever got enough attention. The soldier that was her, basically her supervisor, that took her life, then took his own life. And so it's come back in the news lately with the election, and it's unfortunate. And let's see. I want to stay focused on stories like hers, especially this month, because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I also want to talk more about that 15-year-old that allegedly has been arrested for taking out almost his entire family in Falls City, Washington. I think it was Monday morning, in the wee hours of the morning. So you guys are probably familiar with her case, right? So there was, not only was there a cover-up of her case, there was a cover-up of the cover-up, in my opinion, with the military, which there's been a really bad history of that with assaults and harassment. So I just wanted to read you one of these. How about the New York Times? What to know about the death of Vanessa Guillen? And when is this from? Will it even tell me? You know, sometimes these things aren't dated. So this is from 2 years ago. Specialist Guillen was reported missing from Fort Hood in April of 2020, and her remains were found on June 30th of 2020. So 2 months. And her family put out the alarm bells immediately because they were very tight. She spoke with them multiple times a day, every day. So they knew for a fact immediately that something was up, and they traveled to the fort that she was stationed at immediately. Like overnight, they showed up and they camped out. Her case inspired protests and led to the Army to discipline more than a dozen officials. The discovery in 2020 of the dismembered, and burned remains of Vanessa Guillen, a Fort Hood soldier who disappeared on April 22nd, 2020, sparked outrage from Central Texas to Washington. Specialist Guillen's case captured the attention of celebrities, lawmakers, and other public figures, including former President Trump. So this was written November 30th of 2022. Who met with her family at the White House. The case also drew particular outrage from women in the military and Latinos. Interest in the case has been recently rekindled by the next Netflix documentary, I Am Vanessa Guillen. I hope I'm saying her last name right. I haven't watched the Netflix documentary, but I will. Released on November 17th, which examines her life and death and follows her family's journey for justice. A woman who was the only person charged in the 2020 unaliving pled guilty on Tuesday to 4 counts, including accessory to red rum after the fact. Specialist Guillen's family has raised allegations that she had been harassed before her life was taken. Activists called for systemic changes in how the military handles reports of harassment and assault. In December 2020, the Army found major flaws in the culture at Fort Hood and disciplined more than a dozen officials. So if you don't already know this, Fort Hood had a really bad history for young officers disappearing, and then just the military saying that they went AWOL and just washing their hands clean of them. Let me put my little disclaimer in right here so I don't forget. Everything I say is simply my opinion, even when I'm reading an article. Still just my opinion of the article, basically, because I'll interject some of my own thoughts in there, and you might not know what's my own thoughts and what's the article. I try to make it obvious which is which. But anyway, all my videos are made for YouTube. It's an entertainment platform. I strive to be educational and to learn something, and really just to open up a discussion. So thank you for being here, Annie Ruler. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. And anybody else that is here, please say hi so that we know you're here if you want, if you can, safely. Not if you're driving, of course. So let's see. Here's what we know about the case. Who was Specialist Gillian? Specialist Gillian was born and raised in Houston with 5 siblings. Her mother, Gloria Gillian, or Julian, it's Guillen, said she had an interest in the military since childhood, when she would play with her brother's toy pistol. Despite her mother's reservations, she decided to enlist at age 18. Athletic, she lifted weights, played soccer, and ran on track and cross-country teams. Specialist Gillian's mother said she had enjoyed attending church with her daughter. A memorial at her home was surrounded by angels and figures of the Virgin Mary, which Specialist Gillian wore on a gold necklace that she never removed. One person pled guilty in connection with her unaliving. Prosecutors announced a charge in the case on July 2nd, 2020, detailing accusations that Specialist Gillian, was unalived by another soldier who then tried to dispose of her remains. And remember, this happened on the actual military base in the artillery warehouse, that's where she was assigned. In a federal complaint, the accused soldier was identified as U.S. Army Specialist Aaron Robinson, 20. A few days before the charge was announced, Specialist Robinson unalived himself with a pistol. The authorities also arrested his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar, in Killeen, Texas. Justice Department officials said in court documents that Specialist Robinson told Miss Aguilar, like the singer, that he repeatedly struck Specialist Gillian on the head with a hammer, taking her life, and hid her body in a large box. The couple then tried to dismember and burn the remains, according to the complaint. Miss Aguilar pled guilty on November 29th to 1 count of accessory to red rum after the fact and 3 counts of false statements or representation. She faces a maximum penalty of 30 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a $1 million fine, prosecutors said. How did the specialist disappear? Specialist Gillian was last seen around noon on April 12th, 2020. No, April 22nd, 2020. That's wild, all those twos. Noon, April 22nd, 2020. So that's the 4th month. Anyway, let's get lost in our numerology rabbit hole, right? Like in the Idaho 4 case. In the parking lot of her squadron's headquarters at Fort Hood, investigators who searched her phone found that the last person she texted was Specialist Robinson. Specialist Robinson worked in a building at Fort Hood that was adjacent to where Specialist Gillian worked, according to Special Agent Damon Phelps of the Criminal Investigation Command. A witness told investigators that Specialist Gillian left the arms room where she had been working and went to the arms room controlled by Specialist Robinson to confirm serial numbers for weapons and equipment, the complaint said. Specialist Robinson later said he read her the serial numbers and gave her the paperwork, according to court documents. He said that he believed she then left to go to the motor pool. The two witnesses later said that on the same day they saw Specialist Robinson coming out of the arms room pulling a large tough box with wheels that appeared very heavy in weight, according to the complaint. How the search unfolded. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I'll just read a little bit more. But you guys know where I'm going with this, right? That it just came to light, I think yesterday, that when the then president, let's see, at some point, Trump had met with her family and promised them that he would pay for the funeral. And this was witnessed by many people. It was actually filmed and it was on television. So he met with the family for like 25 minutes, said, just send me the bill for the funeral, we'll pay it. And so they did send it to him and he didn't pay it. And then it's reported that he said some really vile things, that the bill was for $60,000, which I'll admit that's a lot. But, you know, when you know that your kid was taken in this most despicable way and a bazillionaire offers to pay for your services, I'm sure that's easy to run up a $60,000 bill for a funeral. I mean, funerals are extremely expensive. So when they got the bill, when Trump got the bill and was told how much it was, he said some terrible things to the effect of, don't pay it. It doesn't take $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican. And I apologize for even saying that the way I said it. But this is what then President Trump said. And I think it's more than allegedly. I think it's on record by so many people. It's just insane. It's just disgusting. 20 years old. And, you know, he could have just said, you don't pay it, that's too much. But then, no, he had to go make a racial slur. Hideous. I mean, absolutely hideous. Let's see. So, Specialist was reported missing on April 23rd. On April 24th, the U.S. Army CIC, the Criminal Investigation Command, posted a news release asking for the public's help in finding her. Thousands of soldiers searched the buildings, the barracks, the fields, training areas, lakes, and trails at Fort Hood. It must have made the Red Rummer pretty nervous. On June 30th, 2020, human remains were found near the Leon River in Bell County, Texas. On July 3rd, the Army confirmed that the remains were Specialist Gillian's. Wow, the day before Independence Day. That's pretty astounding. So the accusations against Ms. Aguilar, when Specialist Gillian disappeared, Ms. Aguilar, 22 at the time, was living with Specialist Robinson. According to the complaint, she pled guilty in November and faces a maximum possible penalty of 30 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a $1 million fine. According to court documents from April 22nd, 2020 through July 1st, 2020, Aguilar assisted Army Specialist Aaron Robinson in corruptly altering, destroying, mutilating, and concealing evidence. That is the body of Vanessa. In order to prevent Robinson from being charged with and prosecuted for any crime, said a statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Texas. Prosecutors said in a court document that she initially lied to investigators about what she knew, but on June 30th confessed to playing a role in the disposal of Vanessa. Ms. Aguilar told investigators that Specialist Robinson had picked her up late on April 22nd or early April 23rd at a gas station where she worked, And she said that she helped Specialist Robinson dismember with an axe or a hatchet. Oh, I'm like wanting to stop right there, but I guess I'll read a little bit more. I just want to interject here too that taking someone's life is such a sick, warped, unthinkable crime. But then the dismemberment, like the kind of hate, the kind of absolute I have no words. Absolute disgusting, unbelievable. The couple buried the remains near the Leon River, it said. Army leaders have declined to discuss possible motives for the unaliving. So I'm just going to interject here that, and I haven't watched the documentary yet, that I believe that there was an assault that happened, but we know for a fact that there was harassment, ongoing harassment that had happened. And I know that somewhat out of respect for the victims, that law enforcement and military does not like to disclose about sexual assaults. And some of that I actually agree with, of course, that, out of respect for the victim and the victim's family, it's so humiliating and degrading. Yet at the same time, people need to know the truth, and empowering people with the truth. So I do feel mixed about that. Declined to discuss possible motives for the killing. So obviously they're withholding information. They don't want to discuss the possible motives. Like, why not? Why not just say what it is? More than a dozen officials were fired or suspended at Fort Hood, which is good, right? It's unfortunate for everybody that got ensnared into the hideous nightmare, but people that were complicit before, during, or after the fact, crazy. I mean, they probably should have been more than just suspended or fired. Probably some of them should have been convicted of crimes, but that's really hard to have happen in cases like this. For months, activists, politicians, and Specialist Jillian's family called for an investigation into Fort Hood, the nation's third largest Army base. On July 10th, 2020, Ryan McCarthy, the Secretary of the Army, ordered an investigation into Fort Hood's command culture after a year of violent deaths, suicides, and complaints of harassment on the military base. And this isn't exclusive to Fort Hood. I mean, this is a profound element of military, and women that are going to serve in the military know this, and they know it ahead of time and still can fall victim. Absolutely. As a result of the report on investigations findings released on December 8th, 2020, 14 Army officials at Fort Hood were either fired or suspended, including several high-ranking leaders. The investigation found major flaws at Fort Hood and a command climate that was permissive of sexual harassment and sexual assault, said Mr. McCarthy. And think about the cases from Pullman, Washington, right? From Washington State University, and the police department there on campus, and the police department in the town of Pullman, and even thinking about the situation down there in Kentucky with the sheriff that killed the judge, right? Is it Judge Mullins? I think it's Keith Mullins. And then the sheriff's name is Mickey Stein. Is it Mickey Stein? And I've been waiting to get updates on that. I haven't seen anything. But there was the harassment and assaults going on there, and probably a permissive climate, right? A report inventories missteps by the military. Maybe I'll stop reading here and get back into, but I don't know. Maybe we want some solution, right? Let's see. Yeah, I'll just read a few more paragraphs because I actually think I have read almost all of it. Hello, Anna Bees. How are you? So I'm reading an article about Vanessa Gillian. If I'm saying her name right, I do not know. I just like to call her Vanessa. The soldier that was red rummed on the base of Fort Hood in Texas 4.5 years ago, that has come up in the news in the last 24 hours with the deplorable remarks that Mr. Trump made about her expensive funeral and her nationality, right? I don't want to repeat it. I already said it, and I apologized for saying it even the way I said it, which was kind of, YouTube friendly-ish. I mean, it's just disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. So, Army investigators detained Specialist Robinson in the unaliving of Specialist Vanessa just hours after her remains were found. But a series of missteps allowed him to flee and then fatally shoot himself, according to an Army report released on April 30th, 2021. Among the report's findings, Specialist Vanessa was sexually harassed, but not by Specialist Robinson, and that he had also been accused of unrelated sexual harassment. The report found that a breakdown in communication between his unit and criminal investigations agents allowed him to escape. How bizarre that they're trying to say he didn't sexually harass her, because that's just weird. Family files lawsuit against the government. In August of this year, Natalie Quam, a lawyer for Vanessa's family, filed a $35 million lawsuit against the U.S. Army for the assault and the wrongful death of Vanessa. So that's the whole article from 2 years ago. And then again, I don't feel the need to update you guys on how her name has come back into the news media currently. And I believe that her case deserves more of a focus, not just what the then president had said in his deranged remarks and his refusal to pay the bill that he so generously offered to pay, when he had a camera on him. I mean, what's $60,000 to somebody in his position? Give me an effing break. And yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's absolutely despicable. But, the narcissism, the personality disorder, the full-blown personality disorder that I think I'm not the only person that identifies this with the former president that is on the campaign trail right now. One of the most profound features of personality disorders is that these people only have two ways to interact with other people. And those two ways are both very extreme. One method is to seduce or flirt. The other method is to destroy. So it's either seduce or destroy. And if the seduction doesn't work out, then the alternative is to destroy. And I think we see that quite a bit with the stories that keep coming up. And it's just crazy. So, I wanted to talk more about this because of the misogyny, because of the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and because a profound figure like the former president being so blatant with his disrespect of women is just, I think, hurtful for all of us, including his own family. But whenever somebody has such a disdain and lack of respect for women and they treat women so badly, it is kind of a given. It's abundantly clear that they've got mama issues, right? Totally mommy issues. And the fact that he buried the mother of 3 of his children on his own property in a swampy area without landscaping, without a tombstone, without any type of respect for her remains. The fact that he did that is atrocious. The fact that her 3 children that she gave birth to haven't demanded more for their mother is incomprehensible to me. I mean, that's just completely insane. And I don't want to go on and on about that, but I do want to bring up that that wife had claimed that he had sexually assaulted her, and then she recanted that claim. But there's so many women that claim that he assaulted them, and he's admitted to assaulting women, and then he calls these women that he may or may not have assaulted the chosen ones. It's just so repulsive. And I feel like it's important to discuss at this point in time because we're like less than away from the election day. And the fact that this person is even being considered a contender to be of our country is beyond me. It's just mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. I saw a video about it. It's horrible that he said that, but I'm not. I know, Annabise. I agree with your statements, and it's just so hard to discuss on YouTube. I have tried for so long to not go there, but there's still people that are not just considering to vote for him, but that are planning to vote for him and think that it's all just a bunch of lies and sabotage. Man, you know what I like to say, denial ain't just a river in Egypt, right? It's completely insane. Completely insane. And the people and the companies that he wants to destroy, that he has every intention of destroying if he is reelected. And I would venture to guess that he'll do a pretty good job of trying to destroy the companies and those people, even if he isn't reelected, which it'll be worse if he's reelected. But it just is insane that there's even that question. And I also wanted to talk about the airplane that flew over Taylor Swift's concert in Miami, Florida over the weekend, I think it was. It said on the banner, it said Trump 2024 in quotes, something like, "Are you ready for it, cat lady?" And then MAGA. Such an overt threat. And to fly publicly over a huge arena of her fans like that, that's called street theater and gang stalking. That is exactly what street theater and gang stalking are. He's harassing her in front of thousands, tens of thousands of people, and really millions of people when it gets publicized on the news. So, yeah, Jackie Bushable, did you know about that? I mean, I had to look it up because when I heard it on the news, I was like, no, they have to be exaggerating. They have to be exaggerating. Are you ready for it, cat lady? It'd be one thing if he was like, I don't know, being like funny and not so serious about it. But when he does his rage posting, at 3 in the morning in all caps, I hate Taylor Swift. I mean, to me, he's making direct threats on her personal safety. He knows how his supporters are, how they would defend him. No, I just heard it here. He's dangerous. Yeah, he's extremely dangerous. I mean, I'm not necessarily a Taylor fan one way or the other, but just to do that to anybody is completely insane. And anything that you do when you're speaking derogatory about other people, you're really just showing your own lack of class, aren't you? I mean, that's one of the reasons why I try to stay on the up, because why focus your efforts on trashing other people? Why not just focus on positive things and focus on yourself? You can focus on your own self-criticism, your own improvement, your own actions, and focus on the things that you like about people. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So it's lovely to have like-minded people, because I do get really nervous bringing up the issue at all on YouTube, because it seems like, especially in the true crime community, that there's so I like to call him the Angry Orange supporters. I don't even like to say his name. To me, it's like Beetlejuice. And man, he's just losing his crap, literally. So, I told you guys I have been talking about it more as the election day gets closer, and we are a week and a half away. And I was so wound up and nervous about the whole election, and that reduced my anxiety a great deal. Somehow it was like magic. I was concerned that something might happen and I might not be able to vote on the 5th of November. But yeah, I mean, that was why I did it, was to check that off of my list of things to do. I really didn't expect it to reduce my anxiety so significantly, but it did. It did. It was quite cathartic, to use one of my favorite psychobabble words. What does Taylor say about Trump? I've not been listening. Well, after some pretty deranged things that he said and did, maybe it was after the debate. It was, I think, the same night as the debate. So after he went off about the dog and cat eating Haitians, she made a that she was going to be supporting Kamala Harris as preference for the election as the presidential candidates. So does that answer your question, Annie Ruler? So, I mean, the whole cat dog eating thing, it's fun in a way. And I don't know if you redacted your message or if it might have been YouTube, huh, Annie Ruler, if you want to say. That's wild. She didn't say any except she endorses Harris. Right, Jackie Bushable. Thank you for being specific about that. That was all she said. And then I think it was the same night or the following night that he put out the rage post, all caps, like you're yelling. All he said from start to finish was, "I hate Taylor Swift," and then a whole bunch of exclamation points. It's just so freaking juvenile. It's like, some people are going to vote for you and some people aren't. But to shout it from the rooftops that you hate somebody because they showed support for your opponent. Again, I've told you guys in my last couple of lives that I ran for township trustee a total of 3 times in the state of Ohio here over the course of like a decade. Going back, it was probably like 12 years ago the first time I ran. I don't know. Anyway, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about our democratic system. It's a wonderful experience to campaign and to run for public office. And I never thought I would do something like that. And I was glad that I did it. I'm glad I didn't win, but I'm glad that I learned about that whole process, because there's no way you can wrap your mind around it unless you go through it. And of course, it's lovely to have people support you. It's lovely to have people ask you for campaign signs or to write letters of support for you to your local newspaper. That's all great. But when people have campaign signs for your opponents, or they write letters of support to the newspaper for your opponents, to come out raging against them would make you look like a crazy person, and it would just scare people. It would just make people like shy away from voting for you at all in real life, in my humble opinion. So he's not the first crazy she's had to deal with. Good point. Right. I mean, I'm sure she's had a million stalkers, right? Oh, you spelled out the rump. Didn't want your algorithm messy. Oh, thank you, Annie. That's so thoughtful of you. And that's not why I call him the angry orange. I call him the angry orange because, like Beetlejuice, I don't want to say his name, but also because to me that's what he is. I mean, all of that bronze makeup on his face, like who freaking does that? Who the F does that? And then for men to wear that kind of makeup and make it so obvious. I mean, I know that all men that are on the television screen wear makeup because you kind of have to. I mean, the television screen does weird things to your skin and your hair and your clothing, your body. It distorts everything and it makes you look bizarre. So, you know, they cake on all that makeup onto news anchors as well as actors. And I fully expect that anybody on national television is going to have makeup on, but to have it be that obvious and that orange, that bronze is just completely insane, especially when it's like not blended, when it's like that hard edge. It's just like, don't you have a staff of makeup artists that are taking care of that? Like, can't you fire them? I mean, come on. Anyway, yeah, the one of the last things I want to say about the angry orange before I move on from that topic is just what an attention whore he is. And I'm not sorry at all to say that, because he is 1000% attention whoring. Like, he doesn't care, in a sense, what people say about him, just so long as people are talking about him, just so long as he has rented space for free in the imagination of the American population and the global population. He just needs people to be thinking about him in order to feel like he actually exists. I mean, that's the epitome of a personality disorder, is to have such a lack of self-esteem and such a porous ego structure that they have to be the center of attention, even if it's negative attention. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. He probably doesn't anymore because he's a groper and gross. He probably doesn't what anymore. Yeah, so there was another allegation that came out into the news media yesterday with a former model who's in her 50s now, and I think she lives in Texas, and said that she was dating Jeffrey Epstein, and when she was a model 30 years ago in her 20s, and they were in New York City, and Jeffrey said, hey, let's go stop by my friend Trump's place. And they did. They stopped by the Trump Tower, and in her opinion, it felt to her like they were playing some kind of sick sex mind effery with her. So as soon as she met Donald Trump, he was like paws all over her. And then when she left with Epstein, he became rageful and accusatory and said, why did you do that? And she felt just absolutely crushed and disgusted and ashamed. And she also picked up that while it was happening, she saw them like smirking at each other and smiling at each other. And her whole life, it sounds like, has assumed that it was some bizarre kind of sexual game, so to speak, that they played, and that she probably wasn't the only one that they played that with. And then the more that she keeps hearing all these stories in the media, she felt compelled to come forward with her own story, especially given the fact that this guy could become reelected as the next leader of this country, which, I'm sure you guys haven't managed to not hear about General John Kelly and what he said about the whole thing, which, like I said, I do want to move on. I don't want to keep barreling down that path of heinousness. I mean, it's weird to me how the true crime and the politics are kind of merging. It's like two rivers coming into one, in a sense. I mean, if you believe that this person is a criminal, which I do. I think he's a convicted criminal, and I don't think that the system's been rigged against him. If anything, I think the system has been rigged for him. So, have someone to put his makeup on. He probably doesn't anymore because he's a groper and gross. That's funny, Anna Bees. Yeah, maybe they all refuse to go anywhere near him. Because, allegedly he has a very bad odor as well. So, I did want to talk more about Springfield, because you guys know I literally live 1 minute from the border of Springfield. 1 minute. I'm not exaggerating. Springfield, Ohio, where they do not eat the cats, the dogs, the geese, the ducks. Like, none of that is happening, and it's almost laughable. But I wanted just to go over some basics of the city, because I keep hearing him threaten to return to Springfield before the election day. And I hope that he doesn't, because it'll bring a lot of unrest and safety issues up for a lot of people. So I hope that he is too busy, or just tired, or what have you. I hope he decides not to. But all of these claims about the 30,000 Haitians coming into the city of Springfield it's a really big city. It's one of the most spread out cities. So it's not that big in population. At its peak, the city itself was only 82,000. And that was back in the 60s. And it declined rapidly. I think in the 80s, by the 90s, I think it was down to 50,000, under 50,000. Right now, it's currently over 60,000 because of all of the Haitians that they offered jobs to and invited to become citizens in their city, because they needed people to keep the economy growing, to keep the economy alive, not growing, to keep it from sinking, because it was sinking. And it's probably still just barely treading water. But it's still currently kind of a ghost town. It's still like 20,000 people shy of what it can contain. And that's just in the city limits. If you go outside of the city limits, currently it's 136,000 people in the area, because it's surrounded by farms and rural area. It's huge, spread out. So again, back in the 60s, at its peak, it was between 150,000 and 200,000 people. So it's shrunk quite a bit. And by having the Haitians there, it's literally keeping it from shrinking even further and becoming half of the size of what it once was. So they're more than welcome. I'm not saying that it hasn't created some problems, but overall, the community of Springfield is extremely happy to have them there. They have solved some of the problems. And then you guys know the whole story about the woman and her cat, Miss Sassy, that I was talking about the other day. And you guys have probably heard about it in other news outlets. Not that I'm a news outlet, right? I'm just little old me. But Miss Sassy was a resident of Springfield's missing cat that she was angry with her Haitian neighbors, and she put a very angry Facebook post up accusing them of abducting her cat and eating it. And then I think it was 3 days later that she found Miss Sassy in her basement. She felt terrible for putting this post up publicly, and she went over to her neighbor's house and apologized in person for doing it. And I can only imagine how stupid she feels now that it's created so much havoc and it's become such an insane national topic. I mean, it's just mind-blowing how people keep bringing it up. And I do have to admit, I do like some of the music. The cat dog eating songs are hilarious. So it's some good comedy, but it's just sad. It's absolutely sad. So let's talk about Fall City, Washington, because I just need to get my mind out of the gutter. Jackie Bushable's in Ohio too. What part, if you want to say? I used to never say. I used to just say I'm within a couple hours of Columbus, and all my other YouTube cohorts that are in Ohio, like Paula Plunder and Zav Girl, and there's a few others that I know about. Trying to think of the guy's name who's down south who does the like scary movie stuff. I like him. I've been watching his channel lately. Anyway, all of the folks that I know that have channels that are in Ohio that talk about whatever city it is that they're in or near, I was kind of jealous. I didn't feel like I could share that. But once all this stuff started happening with Springfield, I was like, I have to share it because I have a lot to say because I'm here. And it has been so hard on the community with all of the threats. I told you guys, didn't I, that I know one mother in particular who was in a lockdown at Walmart and a lockdown at Kroger's when she was trying to buy groceries, and there were bomb threats. And they did full lockdowns in the freaking grocery stores. Like, I knew that was happening in the schools. I knew that was happening in the government offices. I did not know that was happening in the grocery stores. I was just like, And then I knew that kids were missing a lot of athletic events. I knew that Wittenberg College had to close down more than once. For a lot of the people there, especially the Wittenberg University students, they felt like they were going through the COVID stay-at-home orders again, where they were having to do their courses online and not do their athletic events. And that's just sad. I mean, a lot of college kids are on athletic scholarships, and a lot of high school kids are trying to get athletic scholarships, and then their games are being canceled. So anyway, we're going over to Fall City now, right? Fall City, Washington is about a half an hour east of Seattle. It's a beautiful, tiny town. It's under 2,000 or right around 2,000 people. So on Monday morning at about 4:45 in the morning, a 15-year-old boy who was immediately arrested had taken the lives of his mother, his father, his 13-year-old brother, 2 unidentified other siblings, and he shot his 11-year-old sister twice, but she got away. So his 11-year-old sister is the one who has been recuperating at Harborview Hospital on Capitol Hill, which is a place where I used to do a lot of my work when I did crisis interventions. I did a lot of them in the emergency room at Harborview. I even did a few of them on the psych unit at Harborview. So I'm very familiar, and it's just unthinkable. This 11-year-old girl was shot by her 15-year-old brother twice. She escaped the house, this big, beautiful, like, it's like a log mansion. It's an A-frame. It's right on a lake. It looks like it's something out of Martha Stewart magazine or Architectural Digest. It's just this perfect, gorgeous home. Maybe I'll use a picture of it for my thumbnail. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. It just shows you can't judge a book by its cover. You look at that house and think, wow, the people that live there must have the happiest lives in the world. And the mother and the father were in their early 40s. The mom was a registered nurse, but her license, I think she let it expire a couple of years ago. All 5 kids were homeschooled. And it seems that all 5 kids are the biological product of the mom and dad that were both gunned down. So I don't know that many facts about the case because not that many facts have been released about the case. But of course, Miss Paula Plunder immediately got all of the, the FOIAs, and she's put out a lot of good material on her channel. So I'll just direct you to her channel with links over there to a couple of videos that she's done that are just like half an hour long and have kind of all the basic information. But I'm sure we'll learn more about it. So some of the things that are so profound and distressing. The 15-year-old boy, I think his first name is Andrew, and his name is out there, so I'm not doxing him, his first name and his last name, but I'll just go with the first name just to keep it simple. That he called 911 himself from in the house and said that he had himself locked in a bathroom and that his 13-year-old brother had killed everyone in the family and then hung himself. He called 911 and then blamed one of his victims. So I'm going to guess that he had no idea that his 11-year-old sister wasn't deceased and that she snuck out. So when she called 911, she told them that when she snuck out, that her 15-year-old brother was the one who shot everyone and that he was still alive when she got away from the house. So I think she just went to a neighbor's house and called the police from there. I mean, how unbelievable for that little girl. How unbelievable for all of the neighbors. How unbelievable for law enforcement. I mean, law enforcement on the body cam footage, the 911 calls, I commend them. They did an amazing job. This is like small town, like Mayberry type of police department, and they were on it. They handled the situation extraordinarily well. That kind of thing simply does not happen there. I mean, that area, Fall City, is like where it's close to where Gary Ridgway would dump some of the bodies from his serial killing days. So it's not a naive area is what I'm trying to say. It's one of those areas where grisly things have happened, but they don't happen often. And it's not the community members itself that are doing these heinous things. It's a really nice small town. It's in the foothills of the Cascades. It's just beautiful. It's not that far from Roslyn, where they filmed a lot of the television show Northern Exposure. It's an absolutely beautiful area outside of Seattle. I mean, all of the area around there is simply phenomenal. But this house was right on the lake. So when the gunshots were fired, the reverberations everybody heard the multiple firings and multiple people called 911. But of course, the main calls that they were focused on is the one from the 15-year-old saying that he had himself locked in a closet to protect himself from his 13-year-old brother, who he alleged hung himself. So when the cops went in, they're thinking that they were going to find somebody hanging. I don't think that he went through with staging that, but I don't know. I don't think that information is really out yet. But that poor little girl, I just can't freaking imagine. And yeah, I hope she's got some really solid people in her life, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. I know that they have a strong church community around them. So there's that. That's awful. I'm so glad they got him. So sad. Yeah. And, so his attorney is like trying to emphasize how he's just a kid. He's 15 and, he likes to mountain bike and skateboard and he's never done anything bad in his life. So let's treat him with the kid loves. Like, are you kidding me? Like, first of all, I don't even care what transpired it. I don't care if he was abused, like I believe the Menendez brothers were abused. To do that to his siblings as well as the parents, in the event that he's going to make some claim like that, which would be my guess. And let me just say that when the Menendez brothers claimed that early on in their trial, I actually believed them. I have always believed that the Menendez brothers were horribly victimized by their father, because what would drive people to do something like that? That stuff doesn't just come out of the blue. So who knows what the situation is with this kid in Fall City. But even if it's something that terrible and drastic, I mean, there's no excuse for that type of brutality. Just in my last live, I was talking about The Burning Bed and that movie that Farrah Fawcett Majors did. And it was around the time that movie was done in the 80s. And I think, subsequently after that there became the domestic violence victims protection law, that if you were the victim of domestic violence ongoing and you thought your life was at risk, that you could use that as a defense that could protect you from having to serve a long prison sentence. It still doesn't get you off the hook. You still took someone's life. There's still going to be some punishment. You can't just be a vigilante when you're in a absolute Mortal Kombat life and death. Then yeah, that can be used as a defense where you don't have to serve time, in the event that you can prove that if you didn't take this person's life, they were going to take your life. But that's going to be pretty hard to prove. And I mean, just taking someone's life is such an extremely disturbing scenario to have to live with. I mean, for most people, that would really mess with your head, even if you knew that you did the right thing, that you had to do this to protect your own life or to protect someone else's life. Even if, it would still mess with your head. So yeah, this sister that survived and escaped, unbelievable. And so the brother is ordered to have no contact with her, of course. But how hard for her to comprehend that he did that to her family, that she doesn't have her family, and that he was willing to take her life too. It'll be really interesting as we learn more about the intricacies of the case and what led up to this. It's just so devastating. So let's see. We are just over an hour. Hey, Fred Field, what is going on, dude? How are you? Yeah. So I was just talking about the 15-year-old out there in Fall City, Washington, that's been arrested for um, shooting up his entire family. So 5 kids and 2 parents is this family. It was 7 people that resided in the home. And so the 2 parents, I think the mom was 42, the dad was 43. I don't know what the dad did for a living, but obviously he was lucrative with whatever he was doing. I mean, you're out there in kind of Microsoft land, so probably that kind of Silicon Valley kind of industry would be my guess. And then 3 deceased siblings, 1 sibling that survived and snuck away, and then the shooter. So 5 kids, 2 parents. And I don't know where the family's from. I don't know where their relatives are located. A lot of people in Washington state are transplants because of all the industry there. I'd say the majority of the people there are transplants. So we'll find out, I'm sure, as time passes. But so sad. So sad. I also wanted to say that the town of Falls City, it's right in the area of, if you guys remember that David Lynch television show from the 90s called Twin Peaks, it would be like right around there in Falls City, basically. Twin Peaks land or Northern Exposure land. So why don't we end with a little bit of comedy? Maybe, if we can. Or should we talk about Kylie Rodney before we wrap up? Skip the comedy, right? What can be said about Kylie Rodney and just the injustice done to that girl, that child, and what was done to her over time. So I know that when her song was first discovered on SoundCloud, the Faraway song, a lot of people were very intrigued by the lyrics of the 2 times a year when she felt like she wanted to scream, but she couldn't make a sound. And I keep going back to that, like the 2 times a year that she wanted to scream, but she couldn't make a sound. Could that be the 2 times a year that they hosted the Alpine Club retreat? Could it be that she was some kind of prize that was sold? I despise the thought of it. God, what was that movie with Demi Moore and Robert Redford? You know the one I'm talking about. It's awful. Redford and Moore. Indecent Proposal. That movie. Was it something like that? Was it something like The Highest Bidder? I mean, I think that's a valid question. It's a very specific lyric. And over the course of 2 years, I mean, for the longest time, I'll be honest, I didn't realize that that was the song she wrote. I would hear that song on Ninja Chihuahua and on Shan's channel, Squirrels on Fire. And I just thought that it was a professionally recorded song that just happened to fit well with her case. It was mind-boggling to me when I realized that that was her singing and that those were her lyrics. And yeah, that part about the 2 times a year wanting to scream but cannot make a sound. Ugh. So the thing with that case in Falls City too that really has been compelling to me is that the law enforcement there has referred to it as domestic violence. And I've looked up the definition of domestic violence many times, and I've spoken with my husband about the definition of domestic violence many times too, because it distinctly implies a relationship between the victim and the perpetrator, like a romantic relationship. So I don't know why they would be calling it domestic violence there in Falls City if there's not something like that going on. So domestic violence is also called intimate partner violence. So intimacy being like physical intimacy, not just family. So why are they calling that familicide domestic violence? I mean, certainly the familicide of the Watts case was domestic violence because that was the husband against the wife and the children. But I don't know. I mean, I don't want to. I'll just share with you what I'm thinking is that maybe there was a domestic violence relationship in the marriage of the parents, and that is what the kid was coming unglued over. Maybe. That's the only way I can make sense of why the law enforcement keeps referring to it as a domestic violence case. That would be wild. But that wouldn't make sense why the kid would hurt his siblings as well. But, I don't think you can really ever make sense of homicide. I don't think you can ever make sense of crazy. So on that, I'll go ahead and wrap her up since my chat is so slow. But then Anna B says, Kylie's case is so messed up. I can't believe that Lindsay would do that. I might be wrong, but at this time, I need some proof that she was involved in Kylie being unalived. Let's see. I'm going to reread that. Kylie's case is so messed up. I can't believe that Lindsay would do that. I might be wrong, but at this time I need some proof that she was involved in Kylie being unalived. Of course. And I don't know that she was involved in Kylie being unalived. I think it's more likely that she learned about it after the fact. And, personally, I'm not even convinced that Kylie is not alive. I think it's very likely that she's not, but I don't feel like I've seen definitive proof that she is not alive. I mean, I don't trust that autopsy, period. So yeah, it is such a weird case. And I think that there's so many red flags and yellow flags that none of it adds up. None of it's right. None of it is true. None of it even fits with itself. The whole thing with her car being in the water, like the car literally couldn't have gotten into the water the way it was in the water on its own, in my opinion. Completely far-fetched. Just the way AWP was treated, the way Ryan Upchurch continues to be treated, the way the whole thing has gone is suspicious. The way there was 160 law enforcement officials out there within like a day of her being missing. That's not normal. So like over 50 or around 50 FBI agents. I always go back to this. The FBI, the U.S. Marshals, the Homeland Security, the 16 agencies involved. And then I wanted to bring up Shan's recent post about it has Kylie Rodney's Pinterest account, and it just runs through her Pinterest account. And you can't read too much into what people post on social media. I don't think, unless you know the person and can talk to them, you don't know why they're posting what they're posting. There's a lot of wedding dresses in Kylie Rodney's Pinterest account. And you also don't know if people didn't go in there after she was no longer posting and alter things. You just don't know. But it is fascinating to me. Looking at the account in Shan's video almost supports the idea of Kylie being that she had filed for emancipation, that she was almost emancipated. She was almost 17. She'd graduated high school, and that she was ready to go. She was ready to go off on her own. It kind of looks like she was ready to get married with the dresses. I mean, there's so many wedding dresses, but who knows? Maybe that was just like a little girl fantasy thing. I think a lot of women have that kind of wedding dress obsession, like maybe she watched that television show, Say Yes to the Dress. Maybe it's just that. Unless you know the person, it's really hard to read in. I often think if anything were to happen and my accounts were to get forensically analyzed, and all the things that I look up that have to do with true crime, and it could make me look really bad. So let's see. The intent may have been just a beat down and assaults to teach her a lesson, but she could have been injured very bad by accident and ended up passing. I 100% agree with that, Fred Field. That's one of the theories that I lean towards. I also lean towards it being an abduction and made to look like she's no longer around, so that she's enslaved, free and clear. I also, and I might think all three of these things equally, like 33.3% for each of them. What's the third one? That the intent was to take her life, or that she had already become unalive. And then the rest of it was just a cover up to then try to make it look like she was abducted, or to try to make it look like she'd offed herself. And, when you've got this kind of craziness going on, again, like what I just said, you're never going to make sense of crazy. And there's almost always the rugs involved, and people are in this altered mindset. And then they're just like throwing spaghetti against the wall as far as trying to create an alibi and a narrative. So, I mean, the whole thing is just a freaking mess. The whole thing started with, I think, trying to engineer it towards she ran off with the Lana Del Rey hoodie. You don't want to be forgotten. You just want to disappear. That whole stupid thing. And then you had the alternative narrative that these creepy guys with their bong rips got a hold of her. She could be anywhere in the world, anywhere on the planet. All options are still in the air. That was a weird one when Scammy said that. It's like the cliche would be all options are still on the table. So all of those slip ups where she said weird things like that, like all options are still in the air, that made me think, like, what's in the air? Is Kylie in the air? Like, what are you talking about? Why did that come out of her mouth? Like, the words that people select are very important and significant, for sure, especially when they're lying, because it's complicated telling lies and telling stories. You have to remember the lies that you told, and you have to make it all fit together with the rest of the lies that you're telling. And then when your lies contradict each other, you don't just freeze up and say, what was I talking about? That's not a good way to try to cover. A good way to try to cover is to not have to tell lies and just tell the truth, right? So Fred redacted his message. What happened? That was a good message, wasn't it? Did it say something controversial? Um, about your theory. I agree with you. The car got in the water later by way of boat or something. There's no tracks from the car going in. It's like it was dropped in. Right, I know, Anna. When that was first being thrown out there as theories, like by boat or by helicopter, I thought that was so crazy. When Ryan Upchurch started talking about that maybe the car was buried, like a backhoe, they buried the car and then they unburied it and then put it in the water. That one didn't seem so crazy to me for some reason. And maybe that's why they had that whole part of the woods all cordoned off, where on the map of the search team it said, don't go to this area. Which, like, why wouldn't you go to a huge area when you're looking for a person that you're saying is lost? That makes no sense. A couple of guesses that I have is that there was a lot of growth operations out there, like illegal growth operations. Maybe that the sheriff's offices were operating, or that the car was buried out there. Because there's all those theories too that the car was getting all moved around, like down there on Hirschdale Road with that one call to law enforcement. And it even had her license plate. And then they weren't going to respond to the call of the sighting of the vehicle that they were looking for that was parked down there at Hirschdale Road by the place where the last proof of life photo was taken. That nobody should go out there to respond to that for 5 hours. Like, the call came in at about 2 a.m. and then they were wanting to wait until, I think it was like S2 came back on duty. It was an officer that they referred to as S2, which usually those numbers are like the highest in ranking. So like that wouldn't be like the chief or the sheriff, but the next person in command, like the captain or senior sheriff or deputy or sergeant kind of thing. I did not delete by intent. Don't know what happened. Not even convinced it was her car. Yeah, I know. I'm 100% not convinced that that was her car. That all that crap about the cow with horns sticker on it and all the back and forth about the sunroof, no sunroof. Man, I mean, sometimes I just feel like a cat chasing my tail when I talk about the case. So I try not to allow that to happen. I try to stay more linearly, if I can even get that word out of my mouth. I try to be more linear in my thoughts and discussion of Kylie's case because it is such a freaking hot mess. Because they did, in my opinion, they threw all these ideas out like throwing handfuls of spaghetti at the wall just to see what would stick. And then the one that stuck was the car accident one. So that's the one they doubled down on. That's the one that they took 2 freaking years to wrap up. Like, the answer is in the question. Like, they outed themselves, in my opinion, by taking 2 years to make a motor vehicle accident report. And then I always want to go back to the Stanios. Christopher Stanio, who was a Nevada County Sheriff's deputy, who was boots on the ground in Kylie Rodney's search, who was the stepdad to Trinity Backus, who then went missing 2 months later and was also found lifeless, whose twin brother also worked as a California State Highway Patrol trooper. So he could have had something to do with the whole case. Those Stanio brothers, like, if there's nothing nefarious about the Stanio brothers, then why didn't Christopher Stanio ever step forward and say anything publicly about his estranged wife's biological child being missing and deceased. Why wouldn't he just come out and say how sad it is, how hard it is for the siblings, for Andrea? Andrea, is that? Yeah, Andrea Stanio. Um, the fact that these people don't come out and speak, like Sam Brown never saying, like, oh yeah, I knew the family, I'd been going out there to the Lost Trail Lodge for years. The fact that they're not just candid, again, Idaho 4, the Moscow Police Department wasn't just like, yeah, we know these girls and we all went to school here and this is a tight-knit community and we'd been out to the house a half a dozen times for noise complaints and this, that, and the other. It's so sad. To not just speak candidly like real people is suspicious, in my opinion, 100%. It casts a huge cloud of suspicion on conspiracies to cover up by the law enforcement. So, Anna B says, yes, they did throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Yeah. So, you made me think of Barack Obama's rapping, if you missed it, from the night before last in Detroit. Him and Eminem were campaigning for the Democratic ticket, and Eminem didn't rap, but he just introduced Obama, who then did a little rap, and it was something about throwing up on my sweater, my mama's spaghetti. So did you guys catch that? Did you catch the Obama rap? It's been all the rave in the news the last 36 hours. It's pretty funny. I mean, he was on fire. And I think it's so cool. I'll just wrap this up on the rap music and on a positive note with, I don't think any political party is perfect. I don't think any political candidate is perfect. And case in point, Barack Obama, he really screwed up with that family. What's the guy's name? Warmbier is how you say the last name. They were from Wyoming, Ohio, which is by Cincinnati. It's like Otis Warmbier or something like that. The guy who died basically in the North Korea prison. Otto Warmbier. I was so close. So Otto Warmbier, that was 2017. That was really sad. And there's a message. I got to read this to you guys. Just got the call from the surgeon. Coco's doing great. He was able to remove the mass and the benign lump on her chest. We'll get a call later today when she's fully awake. Oh, yay. They were able to get the masses. And yeah, just so that she comes out of, anytime any of us are under general anesthesia, there's never a guarantee that we'll come out of it. Prayers for Coco. Prayers for recovery and getting on her feet so she can then get the radiation treatment. Anyway, so I was talking about Otto Warmbier, and Obama really screwed up with that family, and I'm really pissed off with him about that still. He told the parents not to worry about their son Otto when he was imprisoned in North Korea for a year. He had them reassured that he was going to have it taken care of and Otto was going to be fine. And we know that didn't turn out that way. But had they not been convinced by the president that things were going to get taken care of, they had the means and they had the wherewithal to take other avenues to try to help their kid. So, they had a lot of money, they had a lot of connections. And, in a situation that tragic, you just want to know that you did everything possible to save your loved one. And they really trusted what Obama told them, and they just believed him, and didn't work out. So I'm upset with him about that. But like I said, no politician is perfect. I'm upset with Kamala about how she didn't fight for justice for the Matrice Richardson case. We spoke about Matrice Richardson recently. I made a video a few weeks ago, and the thumbnail has a photograph of her with boxing gloves and being ready to fight. So Matrice Richardson was the young Black woman that was high in a restaurant in Malibu, and then spent the night in jail in Malibu, was released from the jail, and then her bones were found a year later. Kamala really dropped the ball with that case. I hadn't mentioned that before, but I've always known that. There was like basically no investigation, and I think that the police department needs to be investigated, because I think it's clear that something happened with the staff there similar to what happened with Vanessa Gillian. Sorry, I'm saying her name all different all the time. Like I said, I'll just call her Vanessa. And yeah, the police department needs to be looked into. Even if you're still going to whitewash it, at least pretend to do an investigation. I mean, come on. So that was messed up. Anyway, the point about the campaigning in Detroit the night before last, and Barack Obama, and what I wanted to say about him, just like on a real human level, is that he is one of the greatest speakers of modern day times. And he has a distinct stutter. So I think that that's cool, that even with a distinct and active stutter, that he's still that good of a speaker. So it gives all of us hope that, with all warts and all, we can all be everything we hope to be, hopefully, right? Good news about Coco. So yeah, that is such an amazing gift. And Anna B says, I did hear him. He's the best. So you're talking about Barack. He was just on fire. And I'm sure that rap song was scripted for him, but still, he pulled it off really well. And I thought Eminem pulled off being Jameer really well too. Like, all he did was introduce Obama and ask people to get out to vote, and that his sentiment was very much in line with my sentiment, which is we're in a really scary place as a nation when it's not safe to express your opinion. That's like North Korea. That's exactly what North Korea is. So we can't be like that. We have to be able to express our opinions, and we have to allow other people to express their opinions, even if we disagree with them. We're all hopefully going to have our own opinions and disagree with each other at times. I mean, even as best friends or married couple, you don't agree on everything all the time. If you do, then that's a problem right there, because you have to have your own independent thoughts and process, right? Anyway, on the good news of Coco's surgery outcome, thanks for being here, you guys. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate having viewers. Please hit your like button, and I'll show the creepy thumb once again. I'll go ahead and wrap up today's video, and I'll try to get at least one more video out this week. And if I can't do both Thursday and Friday, then I'll try to get something out over the weekend also. So peace out, you guys. Love and light. Have a really good afternoon. If you haven't already voted, I would recommend voting early if you can. It's nice just to have it checked off your to-do list. And what else? Eat your veggies, eat your produce, high protein, stay hydrated, get some exercise and fresh air. Be kind to yourself, kind to other people. Just to be a little snarky, one of my favorite ways of dealing with people that are trying to instigate trouble is just to kill them with kindness. So that, I think, is a great solution because they don't know how to react. So when you're being super kind to somebody who's trying to mess with you, it's like you're taking the high road, and at the same time you're kind of punching below the belt because they don't know what to do with it. So it's a little hypocritical, huh? Anyway, peace out, love and light. Thanks for the prayers for Coco, and see you guys soon. Have a great rest of your afternoon.